Hello, and thanks everyone for joining us today for our webinar, How CrossChannel is a Game Changer when it comes to connectivity for the financial markets. My name is Tony Jones and I'm the Head of Low Latency Strategy at BSO, and I will be the moderator for today. I'm very pleased to be joined today by Fergus Innes, our Chief Commercial Officer at Crosslake Fibre, Gabriel Chevenot, our Chief Executive Officer, co-founder of Terra Alpha, and Mike Bauer, Head of Pre-Sales Engineering at BSO. Welcome, gentlemen. A little admin before we start. We do welcome any questions, so please do make use of the chat box or via hello@bso.co, and we'll look to cover those questions at the end via a Q&A session. As part of the framework for our discussion today, I would like to stress the importance of partnerships and how leveraging both Crosslake and Terra Alpha's fibre network infrastructure between London, Paris and down to Marseille has enabled BSO to be a market leader in a number of critical low latency routes between London, Middle East and Asia. So gentlemen, if I can start by asking you to provide a brief introduction of yourselves, high level, and Fergus, I'll start with you if I can.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. And firstly, thanks very much for having us to be part of this exciting webinar today and kind of announcing or amplifying the partnership of what we bring together in this community. From my perspective, Ferguson is Chief Commercial Officer at Crosslake Fibre. Crosslake are a really part of the digital infrastructure fabric of the network industry. We are an investor, developer, and operator of unique subsea and terrestrial networks, both in North America and in Europe. And we really focus on providing network solutions for inter-data center connectivity into core users of high bandwidth capacity, low latency, diverse connectivity solutions between those core compute facilities in North America and Europe. We're very much, as I always explain, we're an integral part of the very form of the internet. We're an interconnection of networks, and we're a fundamental part of that, connecting key metropolitans and high compute facility clusters with one another in core locations in North America and Europe.
Thanks, Fergus. And Gabriel?
Hi, Tony. Thank you for having us today. My name is Gabriel Chevenot. I'm the CEO of Terra Alpha. Terra Alpha could be defined as the high-speed train of the data in France. And the analogy is quite accurate, as we are using the optical fibers that runs alongside the French railway track all along the territory. Our mission is really to bring the ultra low latency and ultra high bandwidth to the core of French territory. And our fate together with Crosslake and BSO was to be at this point together because we serve the same aim of providing reliable, extremely low latency and sovereign data transmission services. We provide our services all across the French territory, and we have more than 80 points of presences, and many are to come in 2024, 2025. So I hope we will have the opportunity to even serve more the French market and the international transit in the year to come.
Thanks, Gabriel. I really do like the analogy of the high-speed train. It's very apt for what you guys do. So, and finally, Mike.
Yeah, I'm Mike Bauer. I head up technical pre-sales for BSO. I've been with the company for almost 10 years now, and we've been during that time building, designing, and operating networks, really focusing on low latency and robust connectivity to the major financial centers all around the world.
Great. Right. Well, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Fergus, Gabriel. Appreciate that. So we'll get into it. I'm going to kick off with a question or a statement for all of you. But Fergus, if you can maybe jump in first. How do you see the collective implementation of cross-channel and Terra Alpha infrastructure benefiting the financial market community?
Yeah, thanks, Tony. I think you know it's it's a very sensible amalgamation of organizations and specific unique pieces of network that have brought together an end-to-end solution, which is important and critical into the capital markets business. If trading or arbitrage between international exchanges is important to your business and having a positive effect on your P&L, utilizing technology as the underlying platform, then the services that we've brought together really provide something new into the market, either to improve existing trading strategies or open up and develop a new market opportunity for firms as well. I think the identification of what has been recently deployed in the cross-channel system from our perspective, and this is the first subsea and terrestrial network to be deployed between the UK and France in 20 years, with new fiber and deployed in a very secure manner, really with a focus on long-term availability of the services that we put into service. Underpins a couple of things that are important into the capital markets. One, I suppose the traditional way of designing long-haul networks generally used to meander to connect certain points certainly on a terrestrial route. That kind of design theory has changed over the last decades, and now we really design to be number one, diverse of existing paths, but also secondly, and most importantly, to be as straight as we can to provide performance and optimization between data center facilities as well. So the opportunity really that we've provided into the market is not only providing a brand new route, new fiber, new technology, it's really the next generation network infrastructure for the next generation of users. But we deploy it in a manner that makes sure it's robust and fit for purpose. But the characteristics of what we've put into service ultimately provide something that is shorter, because we're really designing between core compute clusters, and shorter therefore means faster. And the low latency nature or characteristics of what we've deployed between Slough and Paris on our network really delivers that into the market. And then fundamentally, it's taking new infrastructure like Terra Alphas to extend where we finished down to Marseille, and then for BSO to really package that up with the subsea infrastructure they've got going south out of Marseille to really put together a compelling service into the market for capital markets.
Well, it's an interesting perspective from I guess from an asset owner. And Gabriel, is it similar for you?
Well, I say Fergus made an extremely good summary of the situation. And when we first built Terra Alpha a couple of years ago, the focus was really upon bringing alternative routes to the French market. Given the central position of France in Europe, we knew that these routes would be also benefiting from the ultra low latency that the straightest fiber between 2 points is offered by the railways. So it was at our design to provide the ultra low latencies, the lowest latencies that we could between those different points. And in our architectural choice, in the selection of the equipment, the fact that we are offering a full photonic services between those key points, all of that was designed right from the beginning to ensure that this latency will remain unmatched for many years.
Yeah, totally agree. And Mike, I guess from a BSO perspective, putting the service on top of the infrastructure, you agree with what the guys have said?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I'd add that, you know, we invest quite heavily in, you know, places that, you know, with quite tightly regulated telco markets and, you know, quite challenging landscapes like the Middle East or India. And, you know, in order to provide the best service, all the components have to be the best that are available, which I think is what we have with CrossChannel and Terra Alpha, really. You know, all that work and investment would be for naught if, you know, if we fall down on the last, well, still a long segment, but, you know, getting up from Marseille to London, if we don't do that in the best possible way.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I guess the next question I have that leads into this is, and this is predominantly for Fergus and Gabrielle, is what unique elements do you feel your individual networks brings to the market? I say, but let's go with Gabrielle to start with.
I think the fact that we are able to assemble quite standard components from the railway infrastructure to provide this service make it I would say a robust innovation, in the sense that we are dealing with services that are used by the railway industry. So we have a very high stress on reliability, on the latency and the uptime that we provide, and the uniqueness of the track we are using make it even more profitable for our customers. And I would say that the fact that it's used also for the train services make it even more available to the industry, because as you know, as soon as our signalization is stopped, we have some political person who's calling us to reestablish the traffic quite heavily. So we benefit from our mother company infrastructure and manpower, and this is something that is quite unique, I think, in France.
Yeah, interesting. I guess, Fergus, from your perspective, something similar but more related to subsea?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, you mentioned it earlier in terms of partnerships. When we look at developing significant long haul projects, certainly, from a subsea, but including terrestrial, it's really critically important to make sure you choose the right partners. And for us, kind of traditional transoceanic subsea project is driven by what we call a turnkey, which is a single partner that then subcontracts work into ultimately delivering a project in its entirety. At CrossLake, we really pioneered and drive the disaggregated model, and what that really means is we're able to really break the project up into component parts and essentially drive it, control it ourselves, but fundamentally bring best of class partners in to the process to make sure that we are deploying infrastructure that is fit for that next generation. It's all about minimizing the risk of downtime. We don't want to have service down. Certainly, subsea versus terrestrial is a totally different animal when you're looking at repair. Not only in terms of the work to be done, but also the time to be done. So a lot of the focus is really at the front end to make sure we're designing, planning, but also partnering with the right people to bring the right kind of infrastructure into place. And I think that's fundamentally how we're different and how we compare, but also complement other existing routes. And for us, it's about delivering something into the market that gives people the choice of new infrastructure, but also diversity between core compute facilities to ensure that they've got uptime for their end user customers. And for us, the uniqueness of that, obviously, we're, as I mentioned, the first subsea and terrestrial cable between the UK and France in 20 years, but it also means that we were able to design and optimize to make sure, as an example, we have fewer what we call ILAs or amplification locations for when people light that dark fiber. There's fundamentally half the number of other similar types of routes, and therefore there are less single points of failure, and also a much better total cost of ownership in terms of OPEX and CAPEX in lighting that fiber infrastructure. So the way that we fundamentally design, plan, and implement means that then overlaying on that, the types of services that we can offer really benefit different types of market users. And obviously, the way that we've designed this is ultimately a straight point between Slough and Paris, gives the end user in capital markets the ability to operate on the lowest latency service in the market today.
Yeah, I guess from a BSO perspective, as a network provider, but also a service provider, it's those unique elements that you guys have spoken about are critical to the success story that we can bring and put in front of our clients. So yeah, interesting stuff. So I guess the next question for me would be, what benefits do you see from developing mutual partnerships that enable a wider value proposition? So I'm really focusing on the partnership element here, not the bits and the bytes, but the relationships, the partnerships, the trust that goes into that. And I guess I'm going to throw that out to you, Mike, because I know that we've got a number of these partnerships in place at BSO. How do you see those partnerships benefiting not just BSO, but also the wider customer base?
Well, in my mind, I think it really just makes things available that wouldn't be viable for our clients, our end users, for them to go out and procure individually. So I think it really does take cooperation between partners such as we have here to build something and put something together at a scale that works technically, that can then benefit our end users in a way that is commercially realistic as well.
Agreed. Yeah. And Gabriel, your perspective on partnerships?
Well, for us, it was the opportunity to make the continent less isolated from the island, so it's always good. And more seriously, I think the fact that we managed to design the route together so that we can match BSO's requirements with regard to latency and the operation setup that we make for the MCO was really, I would say, a mutual development for our companies, and learning how to work with highly demanding service provider as you are is extremely good school for other customers that we are serving also. And I want to share an anecdote. Some of the improvement we made have been shared with the I would say the mother company, so as to benefit also from our core business of train operations. So it was a very beneficial partnership.
That's great to hear. Firm but fair, I hope, is the viewpoint. And Fergus, I guess you're in agreement with what the guys have said?
Yeah, totally. I mean, for us, it's a lot about trust, because fundamentally, BSO is leading the charge in terms of delivering a certain end-to-end service to clients. So from our perspective, it's having a partner that we trust, that represents what we're delivering as part of that solution. And I think that fundamentally goes back also to, I'm going to say a couple of decades, but that, I think trust is built with relationships and a track record and history of delivering with one another. BSO was a partner and a good partner of ours in our first build, which was a unique and historic build across Lake Ontario, and we provided and operate the fastest paths between Toronto and the New Jersey liquidity triangle. BSO was a big part of that when we launched, and were a relatively new entrant into the market. So that momentum has paid forward to the relationship that we have today, and having that trust of partnership that we both got each other in mind, and ensuring that we're delivering optimum service ultimately to the end users.
Yeah, great. Totally agree with that. So, so a question now for our friends at Terra Alpha and CrossChannel. Can you elaborate on any specific challenges you faced during the deployment or your deployments, bearing in mind a number of the segments of this particular build were done for the first time in over 20 years. It is low latency driven. That comes with its own challenges. So were there any specific challenges that you faced? And are you able to share a couple of those with us? And I guess Fergus, will stick with you.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. I mean, it's any long haul build has its challenges. I think Gabriel will attest to that. I think when you're adding in a subsea element to that, you mitigate the risk with back to good planning, good development cycle in the project, but ultimately having the right kind of partners in helping move that forward in the most sensible way. I think, when we look, the CrossChannel's been operational for over a year now. So if you think back to when we originally started developing and ultimately deploying, we were right in the middle of the pandemic, and that really drove most kind of substantial challenges for us. And it's very interesting to see how that kind of traditional model of visiting sites in person, evaluating different options, whether that's securing building facilities as amplification locations, we just simply weren't able to do that. There was a lot of remote activity in terms of literally, starting, we need something midway point between Boulay-Rose, which is our landing point, to Paris. Google Earth was came to be a really interesting tool for us, and then searching, acquiring land, legal representation locally, and ultimately having to be creative but very persistent, from a remote perspective. So a lot of the risk was mitigated by having the right partners and understanding, and having done this previously a number of times, we have a historic track record of being able to deliver. But I think fundamentally that issue of quarantine of people within on vessels doing deployment, moving between different geographies was a challenge, but one that logistically we're able to overcome with the right type of planning. So no project's ever easy, but even from that kind of remote access of having to manage in a very detailed manner, we were able to deliver the project ahead of time in terms of what our plan was, and successfully to be able to open services up to our end user clients who were eager to jump on the new infrastructure and the new system.
Yeah, I can imagine any ground up deployment or build has a number of similar challenges, but some unique ones as well. And I guess managing those through to the RFS date is just something you get pretty much used to. So Gabriel, I guess you were nodding there. I guess you had some similarities, but maybe some different challenges as well.
Well, actually, it's interesting because when you go from Paris to Marseille in the SNCF organization, you are crossing many regional company departments, whether it's from engineering or whether it's from field of operations. And the actual challenge of coordinating the alignment of optical fibers on this segment was the first time that it was made. So we usually use the optical fiber on a very short span, and the alignment of each span to provide the optimal latency from Paris to Marseille was quite of a challenge. But I think TerraAlpha is a source of pride within the company. So we managed to mobilize quite unique expertise internally to make sure that the services that was ultimately built was of the utmost quality. And I was quite amazed by the number of competencies that we were able to mobilize. As I said, whether it's from engineering to project management to electrical supplies for the ILA, as Fergus mentioned, was a number of challenges that ultimately were able to be met.
Yeah, and I guess it helps you build out your tool belt for the next deployment, right? So a lot of these lessons are learned and carried forward for future projects. So interesting to hear. So I'm going to focus a question on you, Mike, now, and specifically around BSO. Do you see BSO entering into any further similar partnerships underpinning other strategic trading routes?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've done similar things in the past, and we're currently working on projects in let's see, Brazil, the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, and parts of Asia. So I think it's definitely something we're doing, and we're going to continue to do for foreseeable future. It's just that there's no other way to put together these very long haul solutions in the most optimal manner without having many partnerships that we manage to bring things, bring products to our clients.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. As someone who obviously looks after a lot of our low latency investment, I think, and I've said it often than not, the low hanging fruit is pretty much gone now. We're into the second and third decimal point in making a difference, and it's finding those partnerships and those and building those relationships that are ultimately going to help us shave off enough of a difference to be able to put that in front of our customer base. So yeah, I totally agree, Mike. And I guess the last question really, and again, it's for you, Mike. We've been talking about, you know, this fantastic route that's now been operational for a while, lighting up London down to Marseille via Paris, which enhanced BSO's capability from London through to the Middle East and Asia, and a number of those critical routes that we are now market leading on. But why would you suggest to our audience to act now?
Well, I guess really if and I'm sure a lot of our clients see a lot of value and they can quantify value in low latency. And this is the fastest way to get to Middle East, India, Singapore at the moment. And Fergus has said a few times, and I think it's worth repeating, is the first you know, cable across the channel, new cable in 20 years. I'm not aware of any other planned routes. So you know, there's no point in waiting for the next big thing, because it's going to be you know, might have been retired by then. So there's not really any point in waiting, and it is the fastest. And I think a lot of our clients, they may see the benefits of a low latency connection, not necessarily as a completely black and white thing. There are shades of gray here, and there might be some inertia or resistance to change or change out the infrastructure. But I think our clients may be missing out on some benefit that they could start experiencing pretty much immediately.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree with all that. I think the one thing I would just add to that is it is a brand new route. So from the ground up, the asset is state of the art, it's 21st century. We talk a lot about latency, but also the performance of the route is vitally important. And I know the investment that's gone on from Terra Alpha and Crosslake in making sure the infrastructure and the topology is fit for purpose, therefore the availability and the uptime is also extremely high, is critical for BSOs and clients. So that's another reason why I would say, you know, do look out, do some comparisons, come speak to the folk at BSO. We'll be happy to run through some of the data that we have on the what is now you know, a relatively established route. So I guess that kind of brings us to the end of our discussion for today. But we do have a little time for some Q&As. Please feel free to either shout out, put them in the chat box below, and we'll read them out. Or if you're a little shy, you know, go to hello@bso.co, stick them in there, and then we'll come back up at some point down the line, and we'll cover them off. But so I'm just going to go quiet now and see if there's any questions that are out there for us. So I do see a question that's come in. How does BSO maintain control over the market for the Slough Marseille and Paris Marseille routes? So Mike, I mean, I'll give my perspective, but do you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, ultimately, aside from picking the best partners that we can when we build the route initially, it's, you know, it's on us to continually evaluate our place in the market and make sure that we're speaking to all new participants on the route as and when they become available. Like I said, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but that is something that we're constantly working on by establishing and, you know, maintaining relationships with lots of vendors in the market.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add to that as well. As a BSO prides itself on being or having a consultative approach, right? So we are constantly talking to the end user, the end customer, understanding what's relevant, I guess, and what's not, and making sure that it's a constant evolution, right? We never stop still. If you do, I think ultimately you'll be overtaken. So the reality is understanding not only the marketplace, but also the supplier base and the capability around bridging that gap is what I think BSO excels at. So it's a good question. Thank you for that. I'll just pause to see if there's any other questions. Oh, as I speak, here comes another one. Could you explain the concept of being built for speed in the context of a multi-territory project? Do you know, I think Fergus, do you have an opinion on that? That's something you want to pick up on?
Yeah, I think the speed or latency is a characteristic of the new digital infrastructure and how it's designed today. I think, as I've mentioned, you know, if you think back 20 plus years ago, certainly from a long haul perspective, the type of infrastructure that we're deploying on a long haul basis used to meander around to connect into local telephone exchanges, as an example. So networks were very much built in terms or really driven for a different reason versus how we design and deploy today. So, you know, we're always, you know, the same principle 20 years ago remains today in making sure that what we're designing and implementing and obviously operating is fit for purpose and has longevity attached to it. For us, it's always making sure that it's designed and built in a way that has mitigates against any risk of any outages. But fundamentally, the direction or the design of the point-to-point solution is more direct because, again, the direct element is really focused on delivering high capacity, low latency and diversity between core data centers. And obviously, from a financial perspective, exchanges are located within data center facilities. And so the very characteristics of what we're building as new infrastructure delivers not only you know, the best in class in terms of the technology, but also the element of speed becomes part of that. And from our perspective, we then also go an extra leg in terms of focusing to deliver a service into the financial markets of optimizing a capability on the terrestrial and subsea build to bring something different into the market that is really focused on speed and latency. And this is what we're able to deliver as part of this project, access to that optimized capability to really be, you know, to position one part of a larger number of pieces for an end-to-end SLA on a latency guarantee between two significant financial exchanges.
Yeah, and I guess picking up on that multi-territory element, you guys have got a lot of experience of having to deal in different geographies and different domains, right? And I guess maintaining continuity across your end service that traverses these multi territories is something that is key to the success of your story, I guess.
Yeah, from our perspective, we do. We naturally, you know, projects that we've been involved in to date have crossed borders, whether it's between Canada and the US or obviously specifically on CrossChannel between the UK and France. And it goes again back to relationships and having the right partners within territory to lean on to make sure that we've got best in class in those territories to deal with. And it goes back to trust of those partners delivering on our expectation of what we need for that significant part of the project build. And these are relationships, you know, we're fortunate enough, even though we operate in a global internet business, it's quite a small ecosystem. So a lot of the people that we've known over the years operate and have moved around within organizations within those territories. So it's often very easy and simple to reach out and reconnect or connect with close partners to make sure either we can utilize their expertise or they will certainly have be able to provide advice on who best to engage with on that particular element of the project in that particular region.
Yeah, totally agree. And I guess, even down to the change of culture within those territories, can make a difference in between sort of not failure and success, but ultimately how you go about doing your business. So, no, great answer. Thanks, Fergus. That's it by magic. Okay, so no more questions. So that brings us to a nice conclusion. I would like to thank our panel for all their insights and feedback. I hope you found it informative and good listening. And I'd like to thank you, the audience, for joining us today. Thank you and goodbye.